Hello friends, today we bring you a fascinating story about nuns who, despite their vows, find themselves drawn to the allure of love and lust. The story begins during a time when the plague is ravaging the land. The story begins with a man named Tandira, a painter working in a church. Tandira hasn't been paid for a long time, so he goes to the priest to collect his money, but he finds that the priest has passed away. Taking the opportunity, Tandira decides to impersonate the priest by wearing his robes. He pretends to be the new priest of the church. Next, we meet a young man, Lorenzo, who is on the run after stealing money from Jonathan, a powerful government official. Jonathan seeks revenge and fights with Lorenzo, but Lorenzo manages to escape. We then see Pampinia, the daughter of a wealthy merchant who has recently died from the plague. Jonathan arrives to offer his condolences. However, his help comes with the expectation of a sexual favor. Pampinia claims she is promised to the Prince of Russia, who is on his way to marry her. As she prepares to leave, Jonathan reveals that her father had accumulated a large debt, which he, Jonathan, paid off. Her father had promised her hand in marriage to Jonathan in exchange. Pampinia denies this and insists on her commitment to the Russian prince. Lorenzo, still on the run from Jonathan's soldiers, encounters a stranger pushing a cart with a dead body. Lorenzo asks about the path ahead. The man replies that the road leads to a convent where many nuns reside, and the body he is carrying is that of a gardener who has recently passed away. He mentions that he is returning from there. Lorenzo, desperate to hide, asks if he could get the job as a gardener at the convent. The man replies that it's impossible because Lorenzo lacks the required qualities. When Lorenzo asks about the deceased gardener, he learns that the gardener was mute and deaf, which is precisely what they require for the job. Lorenzo sarcastically remarks that being mute and deaf is not a special quality. To evade Jonathan's men, Lorenzo climbs a tree to hide. The soldiers fail to spot him, but after some time, the branch he is perched on breaks, and he falls down, losing consciousness. Later, a group of beautiful nuns finds him and takes him to the convent. At the convent, two nuns come to check on him, looking at him in such a way that suggests they haven't seen a man in years. One of them comments on whether he has broken any bones, but she's actually referring to another part of his body. They begin to touch him, lifting his shirt and kissing his stomach. The act leaves one of the nuns in a daze, and she asks the other to do the same. The second nun also kisses him. Lorenzo, who is conscious but pretends to be unconscious. One of the nuns starts to kiss his lips, but suddenly, Lorenzo opens his eyes, startling them. Just then, the Mother Superior arrives, and the nuns quickly cover their faces, claiming that Lorenzo is mute and deaf. The Mother Superior is delighted by this news, believing that a mute and deaf man would make a perfect lover, since no one would ever find out about their discretions. The Mother Superior asks Lorenzo if he is indeed mute and deaf. Lorenzo nods in confirmation. The Mother Superior then instructs the two nuns to bathe Lorenzo. While bathing him, the nuns engage in a playful behavior, clearly enjoying presence of a man. Meanwhile, Pampinia, troubled by Jonathan, goes to the church with her friend. Everyone there is a virgin. Pampinia tells her friend that Jonathan wants to marry her, but she is already promised to Prince Mark, and she wants to marry him. One of her friends suggests that Pampinia should first meet Prince Mark, while other warns her not to interfere with another's fiancé before marriage. At that moment, Jonathan arrives and questions their presence, reminding them that there's a lockdown. They decide to send Pampinia to a convent until Prince Mark arrives. Then, one friend brings a carriage with a disguised priest and they all leave. Pampinia is taken to the convent, where she is stripped of her dress and made a nun. Pampinia thinks her virginity will be safe here, unaware that the convent is a place of hidden desires and secrets. One day Pampinia notices Lorenzo and asks the nuns who he is. They tell her that he is the new gardener, a hard-working man. Intrigued, Pampinia begins to develop feeling for him. Later, when Lorenzo is working in the garden, a nun who is different from the others calls him over and they share a romantic moment behind the trees. Pampinia witnesses this and feels jealous. Meanwhile, Prince Mark arrives at the palace, where he meets Jonathan. Prince Mark mistakenly assumes that Jonathan is Pampinia's father and presents him with a gift. Jonathan clarifies that he is not Pampinia's father, to which Mark replies that he must be her grandfather. Jonathan corrects him, saying he is Pampinia's future husband. Prince Mark finds this amusing and leaves. On his way, Prince Mark encounters a man who informs him that Pampinia has gone to the convent and will marry him. Hearing this, Mark heads towards the convent. Back at the convent, two nuns enters Lorenzo's room and engage in romantic conversation. They began to undress, but their plan is interrupted when other nuns arrive to bathe Lorenzo. One of the nuns tells Pampinia that she will show Lorenzo the cave today, but Pampinia protests, calling it a sin. The nuns, however, tease her saying they know Pampinia is jealous, but they will still love him today. However, they are unable to proceed with their plan. They pour water into Lorenzo's tub and invite Pampinia inside, but she refuses. After Lorenzo is bathed, the Mother Superior takes him to her room where she engages in intimate acts with him. Pampinia, witnessing this, feels deeply jealous as she has already fallen in love with Lorenzo. The next day, while Lorenzo is working in the garden, Pampinia reads a book nearby. Lorenzo looks at her strangely and likes her. A little while later, Pampinia comes to his room, and Lorenzo understands why she is there. Lorenzo begins to remove her veil, but Pampinia stops him, blindfolds him, and confesses that she wants to marry him. She then kisses him. Soon after, a carriage arrives at the convent to take Pampinia because Prince Mark has arrived. However, Pampinia refuses to leave Lorenzo, so she tells the Mother Superior that Lorenzo is not mute or deaf. The Mother Superior asks for proof and Pampinia reveals that she heard him singing in the garden. To confirm, the Mother Superior goes to Lorenzo and whispers in his ear, "Your ear is cut." Startled, Lorenzo shouts and, realizing he has been caught, pretends it's a miracle. Realizing the deception, the Mother Superior expels him from the convent. As Pampinia prepares to leave, Lorenzo asks her to take him with her. The two leave together. Meanwhile, Prince Mark arrives at a pond to drink water and encounters a beautiful woman bathing. He asks if she is a human and she replies that she is a mermaid. Mark confesses that he loves a girl named Pampinia. The woman then reveals herself to be Pampinia, and Mark's love story begins. On the other hand, Pampinia and Lorenzo arrive at a church, where Pampinia asks Lorenzo if he loves someone. He replies that he does, but he has not seen her beautiful face yet, only felt her kiss. Pampinia tells Lorenzo to close his eyes to remember if she is the girl he wanted to kiss. Just as they are about to kiss, Jonathan arrives. Pampinia tells Lorenzo to run away, but Lorenzo stands his ground. Jonathan attacks Lorenzo, beating him severely. As Jonathan is about to kill Lorenzo, Pampinia intervenes, threatening that she will not marry him if he kills Lorenzo. Reluctantly, Jonathan spares Lorenzo's life but locks him in prison. A few days later, Pampinia tells Jonathan that she will only marry him if he releases Lorenzo. This angers Jonathan, but he agrees to her condition. However, Pampinia has no intention of marrying him. She lies to save Lorenzo's life. Pampinia then meets the fake priest and explains the whole situation to him. The priest agrees to help her. Meanwhile, Jonathan orders his soldiers to take Lorenzo far away. Lorenzo, however, outsmarts the soldiers and makes his way back to Pampinia. On the day of Jonathan's wedding, the priest deliberately delays the wedding by asking absurd questions and eventually asks Jonathan to show his hands. When Jonathan shows his hands, the priest comments on how dirty they are and tells him to wash them. Enraged, Jonathan washes his hands and returns, only to hold his sword against the priest's neck. At that moment, Prince Mark arrives with Lorenzo. Together, they confront Jonathan and overpower him. Jonathan tries to escape, but Lorenzo fights him and eventually pushes him into a well. Pampinia arrives and tells Prince Mark that she cannot marry him. Shocked, Mark insists that the Pampinia he met was at the pond. Just then, another Pampinia enters the scene. Lorenzo, confused, begins to leave, but Pampinia stops him and asks him where he is going. He replies that he is going to find the girl who kissed him and marry her. At this moment, Pampinia asks Lorenzo to close his eyes and kisses him. Lorenzo instantly recognizes her, and with that, the story ends happily. If you liked the story, please hit the like button. For more such interesting stories, please subscribe to our channel.